There's two sides to every coin. Then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks. And some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game, gonna crack down, and shut down, the sundown. I said it's all just a game.
Hi, kids. Welcome to another week of Just a Game here on the Nation Network. I am me. You are you. At least we can start there, right? We know who we are and why we're here. Broadcasting live from Treaty 7 territory today. This is an inclusive program. Welcome to everybody. Glad you are here. If you are looking for a show which involves people talking over each other and yelling at each other about football in the CFL, then you've streamed the right podcast today. Good old the friends of the program or a previous program will be joining us after they've relaunched their show in podcast form, and it's taken off. It's what we like to call in the business flourishing. It surprises the hell out of me too, but here we are. So we'll get them on in just a couple of minutes. Later on, Ryan Pike will join us. I actually have a bone to pick with Pike this week. I have a bone, an issue. And now, sometimes when I get out in front of myself and I get the issues going, I can be proven wrong. So it's quite possible that Ryan Pike, once again, might put me back in my place. Well, that's it. So be it. Where do we start this Monday? Well, we'll start with the local hockey heroes junior version. I guess the smaller version, the baby Flames, who are called the Wranglers. They're playing this week against Abbotsford, the baby Canucks. So Wednesday, Friday, and this is how it works. As the top seed, it's a best of 5. So as a top seed, you can choose to host the first 2 or host the final 3. You get to choose that. So debate amongst yourselves what you would do in the place of the decision makers for the Calgary Flames and the Wranglers. Would you rather host the first 2 games or rather host the final 3 games? Don't think of it as a homework assignment, but think of it as something to ponder. We've gone now almost 48 to 72 hours without Dustin Wolf winning an award. Something seems a little off to me, but I'm sure that'll be rectified by the end of the day. The National Hockey League playoffs continue. Damn it, LA, you had one job. One job. You had one job. That's all. You had one job. And you did it for 20 minutes, rather remarkably. From there, the Edmonton Oilers fought back from a 3-0 first period deficit. Ended up the third time in 4 games that this game, this series has gone into overtime. This time, the Oilers prevailed, tying the series at 2 games apiece. I am no shaman. I am no, black magic artist. I rarely consult the stars. I rarely look at numbers and numerology, but I will go this far. I think if you're an Oilers fan, this is a really good sign. Honestly, I think this is a really good sign. First rounds are always the most difficult. Everybody tells you that. And I think what you're going to find is that the Oilers with that win last night have something to build on. What game are they out of? What game are they? They're out with 5 minutes to go, trailing 3-0 in the third period, but they're not out of anything right now. So that's got to be a huge bonus for them. Matter of fact, the Dallas Stars and the Minnesota Wild find themselves knotted up at 2 games apiece. Dallas winning on the road last night, 3-2. Elsewhere yesterday, both other series moving to 3-1. Boston not leaving much error in Florida. They beat up on the Panthers by a 6-2 score. And Carolina, you thought when the Islanders got that game 3 that maybe, they'd wrap. Now, Carolina Hurricanes finally went on the road. They had a bit of an ugly streak of losing road games in the playoffs. So they finally went on the road. They're up 3-1 tonight. The Rangers hosting New Jersey. Jersey winning in overtime. Former Flame Dougie Hamilton. You remember him, don't you? Yes. Older brother of Freddie, I believe, or younger. I can't remember. Anywho, Devils winning in overtime, trailing that series 2-1. Madison Square Gardens. It goes tonight. Toronto with a 2-1 lead on Tampa. Overtime winner by Morgan Riley from Ryan O'Reilly. That one, I don't know if it was a bit of a shocker, but after that terrible game 1 effort by the Maple Leafs, they have certainly made Tampa look average. Vegas with the win in Winnipeg. Oh, if you were a Jets fan, I can only imagine the consternation you went through, seeing your team rally on home ice, forcing double overtime, and then losing. Having said that, go back all the time to the 0-4 run in that game 6 here at the Dome against Vancouver. And the Flames trailed 4-1, third period, rallied and lost in triple overtime when Brendan Morrison scored. That's still considered the best loss in Calgary Flames history. And Colorado beginning to look a little bit more like the Stanley Cup champions against Seattle, leading that series by a 2-1 mark. So if you're keeping track, tonight, Devils, Rangers, Toronto, Tampa, Winnipeg at home to Vegas, and Colorado is in Seattle. Later on, Ryan Pike will join us. We will talk about the baby Flames. We will talk about the GM search. We will talk about the building. But right now, courtesy of our friends at Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. 3 locations in Calgary: McLeod Trail by Chinook Center, 17th Avenue Southwest, just off of 14th Street, Bow Ridge Road Northwest by the McDonald's, just out from Winsport. You know what? They had a big pop-up sale on the weekend. They've still got great deals. There's still snow in the mountains. There's still reasons to be optimistic that winter will come sooner rather than later. It just seems to be the way the calendar is orientated. So check it out, skicellarsnowboard.com, as they present today's guest. Well. If you told me a year ago that I would be back doing some form of broadcast, I would have said, you're insane. If you told me a year ago I would be back doing some sort of broadcast and these 2 gentlemen would darken my door, I for sure would have bet everything I owned that wouldn't have happened. But here we are nonetheless. It's indeed an honor, a pleasure, and far too long. I welcome back 2 dear old friends. One is a little bit more distant than the other. I haven't seen Mr. Napstuk, Nasty, if you will, for a long, long time. So it's great to have him. Randy Chevrier. Chevy and Nasty are back. They have their own podcast. They're on this one to promote their own podcast. But before we start, do you want to go back to the old tradition now, or would you like to talk and then we'll start with the old tradition?
Rob, it's your show. We're just
I've never felt with you two that it was my show. I just never felt that. I felt it was a show. I was on it, but you two seem to run away and hide with it. Nothing.
Yeah, no, I would say that's it. Well, you were with us in the studio for at least a good 5 episodes.
Then punted. And then unceremoniously punted, just giving an hour off like I had nothing to do.
Well, I think you used that time to take a nap, if I'm not mistaken.
Took naps, ate bonbons. I mean, I did it all. I lived the high life when you two were on the air.
Yeah, you were able to collect your stats.
Yes, I was able to collect my stats and stuff. Shall we?
You got some good background music for us?
I think so. Gavin, can you give me something, please?
A little 300-pound poetry.
A little 300-pound poetry.
For the listeners.
Gavin went and found. There we go. I will step out and allow you two to do the voodoo that you do.
Connections we share, connections we lose. The connections we keep are the connections we choose.
Sometimes we go through phases in life. We get too busy. Maybe we are filled with strife.
Whatever the excuses, whatever the reasons, we lose and gain connections through all sorts of seasons.
Whatever was lost can always be regained, and skills may get rusty, but they can always be retrained.
because it's always joyful to connect and reunite with old friends, family, and podcasts that feel just right.
Chevy and Nasty return here on Just a Game. It's been a minute, but it feels quite the same.
Well, I'll say this, off the radio for about a decade, you haven't missed a beat.
Nope.
No, and I should.
It was that bad back then as well. He literally wrote that in the green room,
which is how much different than what he used to do in the past.
Okay, but do you guys recall the first poem? I'm going to take people back in time. So
no, I don't. I really don't.
So the first poem, we were in, we were going to be broadcasting from the Hot Stove Lounge at the Saddle Dome. And we had already done maybe an episode or two.
Mm-hmm.
And you, Sheldon, and I were gathered right outside the media lounge. And I remember saying, hey, guys, listen, I got this idea. When I used to go on my friend's radio show in Montreal, I used to appear as this guy, the poet. And I would do like a weekly rundown of last week's sports moments, but in a form of poetry. And I think we should do this. And I think you guys looked at each other like I was crazy.
I thought it was a terrible idea. I was
did.
Yeah. And so Rob,
what was I going to say? You both at that point were 300 pounds.
No, but Rob's exact words were, oh, okay, well, do something and we'll see what we could do next week. And I'm like, well, guys, just so happens.
Oh, actually, I do remember this.
And I pulled the poem out of my pocket. I said, I wrote one for today. I said, do you want to do it? I said, Sheldon, would you like to do it? And so when I asked that, I thought we would record it ahead of time. And Rob's like, well, sure, you guys will do it. And Sheldon's like, okay, let's do it. And I said, do we record? He's like, no, you go on live. And we walked in and we started the show with the 300-pound poetry. And soon after that, weeks after that, we got a splitter, like a nice little poetry song.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, like, I think I not saying this in a boastful way, but I did a lot, I think, in the community, whether it's, with charity stuff and things, like kids coaching.
Yep.
I actually played football, even though people don't know about that, that I threw a ball between my legs. But the number one thing that people have been coming up to me and Sheldon over for the last 10 years since we've been off the air, maybe 12 years, is, hey, Chef, you got a poem for us? And, when you messaged this morning,
I just put it out there. I could not have thought of doing this program without it.
And we were glad to oblige. Hey, Sheldon?
Yeah, I'm still I still never totally fully bought into the idea. Although every now and then Chevy would let me write one of the poems. And I remember my favorite clever little line was, away put your weapons. We mean you no harm. Is Chevy and Nasty, our 300-pound charm. And then once I got involved with it, I didn't mind, and we rolled with it for a little bit. But geez, I'll tell you what, Rob, sitting here looking you in the eye, headsets on, microphones on, it's awesome to see you again.
It's good to see you, pal. It's really good to see you. We've lost a little bit of touch. I keep track of you as best I can. Tell us a little bit about life for you now, because you're kind of in a really neat place, I think. If what Chevy's been telling me is true, if he's been lying, then I guess we're about to find out. But you're doing some pretty cool stuff right now.
Well, I am. So, like, obviously, when I got out of football, I was in the real estate industry and commercial real estate, and
because you were still doing the show.
Yeah, I'd show up in the suit. And
I remember that.
And it was kind of getting busy and hectic. But Calgary, Alberta, booms and busts. I think somewhere along the way, I just fell out of love with wearing a suit and, going into negotiating commercial real estate deals. It just wasn't me anymore.
Right.
And we're sitting there out in Lake Koocanusa, the first summer of COVID. Like, you remember on March 20th, when all of a sudden the streets were clear, nobody was out there. So we said, hey, let's just head up to the trailer and spend some time up there. And we're sitting there by the campfire, and I had a drone that I was shooting industrial parks with. A buddy of mine in Calgary got me into drones, and I'm like, why don't we just start a company and just drone, right? Just start shooting drone videos and photos. Do you know how to edit videos? Well, no, but I think I can figure it out. So what do we call it? Well, let's call it WeDrone. So we started WeDrone. He was going to take over the world. Then suddenly I realized that realtors don't just want drones. Everybody's asking, well, do you shoot inside photography? I'm like,
with the drone?
Yeah. And I'm like, no, I don't know, but hey, let's give it a try. How hard can it be? The same way we started this show, by the way.
Yeah.
And from there it grew into virtual tours and social media videos. And then when Chevy was like, I'm bored, let's do something fun. Well, I've got all the gear to start the podcast, so why don't we do that?
Right.
And so it's been fun. It's been a labor of love. 3 years in, I guess now. growing every day and just shooting cool projects I want to shoot.
So tell me about drones, because I can almost, like, it's within the last 10 years, they've really become this thing, right? How do you separate, Joe goes down to Walmart and orders a drone from what you do? Because there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of rules around it, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, I think the more you know, the more rules you realize you're breaking.
Okay.
Like for me, I had to go out and, of course, insure it. I got my regular drone license and my advanced license, because anything within 5 miles of an airport, you need a permit to take off. And if you're within a mile of it, you need to be on the phone with Tower and making sure you got any instructions from them for the day, right?
Right.
So, technically there's a lot of stuff that you have to know regulatory wise, but the software on these drones now, literally you take off, even if by chance you lost connection or it running out of battery, it's just going to circle back and land within 3 feet of where it took off from. So it's pretty amazing. In fact, I'll tell you, do you have time for a drone story? Short one?
This is a 2-hour show.
Oh, well, good. I'll tell the long version.
Absolutely.
So, I was out in East Kootenays, and a buddy of mine's got a construction company. So I was out there shooting his social media videos, and we're doing this project. And I was a one-man show. So I get the drone up first. I fly it for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, bring it down. Now bringing it from quite a ways away. So while it's coming back, okay, I'm going to grab my camera and get my camera ready. Oh, shoot. Oh, I'm going to change out the lens now. Next thing you know, I forgot all about the drone. I should admit to this because it's illegal. It's a little bit.
Yeah.
But things happen. So I go off to shoot, and about 30 minutes later, okay, I'm going to get back there at a new stage, get the drone. Well, I can't find the drone. And that's where it's just that sickening feeling in my stomach. My drone's not there. So I go in there, I check the GPS, the flight path, everything like that. I could have sworn I landed it, and it says it's right here, but it's not there. Homeowner comes out, and he helps me look for about 10 minutes. And then finally he says, how much money you got in your pocket? I said, I got $100. Where's my drone? Points up. It got hung up in a pergola on its way down to the ground. So I'd left it on its way here. I meant to land the drone. We're out in the middle of nowhere, of course, but it gets caught up in a backyard pergola. And it was fine. Just changed out the battery and kept on going.
Well, hey, Rob, I'm gonna put Sheldon on the spot here, but he played football. He had a lot of injuries. Probably didn't have too many injuries in real estate, but Sheldon's actually had a drone injury, and I was surprised when this happened. You got to tell him about your drone injury.
Oh yeah. I was out shooting a property, and of course, like I said, you have to have all your permits and everything like that. This place wasn't even close to an airport, but the drone has a software that before you take off in certain places, even though you have your permits and everything like that, been in touch with Tower, you have to go in and enter this code to take responsibility of your flight. This one time, it popped up in the air, as it should have, but while I was in the air, it locked and said, hey, you have to enter this code, but I've got a drone in the air. So I'm here trying to see with the glare in the sun, all that stuff. And finally, as I'm entering the code, I see the drone shifting back towards me at about 8 feet off the ground. And I'm like, oh, crap. So I try to take back control of it. It ends up flying into a power pole and, breaks off a couple of props and ends up in his belly, buried in the snow. I reach into the snow to grab it, turn it back right-wise again, and the thing starts trying to fly. And that's like a little plastic blender with, it was nasty. It was.
I call him up on the phone. I don't know if ever a family member or a loved one, you speak to them on the other end of the line after they've been injured, but they haven't told you they've been injured, but something just sounds off in their voice. It's like that shocks it. Yeah. Like, Sheldon, are you okay? Oh yeah, Chev, I just cut myself. What happened? Well, I had a drone accident. I'm like, are you okay? He's like, well, I'm driving down to the clinic right now. And I'm like, did you cut your hand off? Like, I'm like, hey, Sheldon, save this one for the air, because this is a podcast. Like, I want to know if you have fingers. Like, take some pictures. But yeah, you were in shock, eh? Like, it was kind of
I was trying to stay calm. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before.
Right.
And a thing is, with a couple of broken props, the thing's trying to fly. I didn't know if I had control of it yet. So I had to get it back on its back and in the bed of my truck. But I got a couple.
How much damage did you do to the drone?
None. Changed out the props.
Okay.
Drone was fine.
As long as the drone's okay.
Hey, drones grow. The skin grows back. Drones don't. Propellers don't.
Something like that.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I know what you're doing, but he's flying drones. You're what?
I'm still in the fire department. Okay. So I got into the fire department.
You and Rennie.
Rene Paredes.
Yeah.
He's a brand new graduate of the first class of 2023. I actually saw him Saturday evening. He's so excited, loves the job. But I've been on since 2017. My role now in the fire department is a community safety officer. So I do a lot of education outreach in communities where we kind of target them as higher risk communities. So a lot of work with seniors, children, people with disabilities, new Canadians. We teach them about fire safety, ice safety, water safety, just try and reduce the risks on the other end of the emergency response aspect of it. And I love my job. Like I think, if I miss going to emergencies. Like I miss going to fires and all that fun stuff. That's very much like playing a sport and being on a team, but I'm doing something really meaningful now. We only have 3 officers for a big city, so would love to see that number grow at some point, but we do meaningful work for people that need that work. I went last Thursday. I was at the Immigrant Education Society up in the Northeast. They do English classes for new Canadians, and go in there and have an opportunity to spend an hour and a half with them, talk to them about fire safety, kitchen safety, talk to them about the fire department, what we do, and just meet people that are super grateful for our service, and just that we're teaching them something that they didn't know, because people coming from different places in the world don't have the same standards, the same cultural practices, and fire safety is super important. I mean, we're seeing a real large number of fires in the cities now, and it kind of took off during COVID, and it seems like the trend is kind of up there, and it has a lot to do with the way new homes are built, new building products, things burn faster, homes are closer, so all these sorts of things lend to a heightened risk. So it's a really neat job that I've got, and I truly enjoy it. I don't work shift work, so allows me to be a dad with my kids. I'm a single dad when I have my boys, and that's an important role for me. So I gladly made that career shift. So that's what I'm doing.
And let's be honest for 1 second. What he tells me, the whole reason he joined the department, and he's still in the department, it's all about that calendar, right? Every year they come knocking on his door. Chevy, you got to be in our fireman's calendar. I think were you Mr. February last year?
No, I did the calendar a couple of years in a row. So the fireman calendar is actually pretty cool. So it was a yearly tradition, actually. In fact, this year will be the last year that the Calgary Firefighters Burn Treatment Society produces a calendar. The Calgary Firefighter Burn Treatment Society is the charity that produces the calendar, and such an amazing charity. I'm considered a director, and I just do some social media posts, and they gave me a title as director, but I wanted to contribute in a volunteer position because doing the calendar was fun, and it was a great way to get in shape and kind of interact with other people in the job, considering I was no longer on the floor. But the Burn Treatment Society, we fund research chairs at the University of Calgary Vet Medical Center, where they do research on animals that can be brought over to human trials when it comes to skin rejuvenation or skin regeneration and a wound treatment. We have the Burn Society at the Foothills Burn Center. That's all funded through the Calgary Firefighters Burn Treatment Society. And it's completely volunteer run. So actually we have one staff member now because it got a little bit bigger than us, but this charity has been run by firefighters on their spare time for however many years it's been in existence. It's such a fantastic thing. They do a burn camp in the summer. So for burn survivors and children, especially that are burn survivors, they have a week-long camp out in Kananaskis where it's all free. They get to interact with other burn survivors, learn, just have a great normal experience. So we do all this amazing stuff. And the calendar was one very small part of our fundraising initiative. And it was fun to be part of. I did enjoy training for that. I mean, during COVID, I was quite isolated. I was actually working from home in my current job. So I wasn't at the fire halls. I wasn't at the gym. And all I did was work from home. And at 5 o'clock at night, I'd shut my laptop. I'd go work out in my gym for a couple hours, especially on the weeks where my kids were at their mom's place. And, it gave me a goal, gave me a fitness goal. And I would say that first year on the calendar really pushed me forward. In fact, that actually helped me get re-signed with the Stampeders the year later, because I was in really good shape. And so it started as a fun thing, a personal thing to get get in shape and just give me some sort of carrot at the end of the stick to kind of work on my own health and fitness. But it grew into something actually a lot bigger for me, a volunteer role with this really amazing charity that does some amazing stuff. We're actually having a burn survivors conference here in Calgary at the Westin in May. And it's some really neat stuff that people don't know we do. And all these guys and girls that are involved with the Burn Treatment Society, my hat's off to them, because I literally post stuff on social media when they ask me, but we have some firefighters there that steer millions of dollars of research money and grants to causes that matter that most people would never know of unless they've experienced a burn or know someone that's a burn survivor. So it's
Right.
pretty cool stuff.
Are you retired
from football?
Yeah.
I keep kind of getting inspired by Chev that maybe there's a chance. Like
Okay.
I'm 48 this year.
Yeah.
So I still think I've got about 2-3 years in that window.
Okay.
I got a quarter anyway. Good.
Okay.
Maybe
if you need it. Yeah. Are you retired?
I don't know. I you know what? I saw Mark Killam the other day. And I said, Mark, you still have my phone number. I said, now Renee's on the fire department. There's no reason why we can't have an all firefighting snapper, kicker, and holder. We have Mike Juhas,
that's
who
right.
was a Calgary Stampeder holder in 2004.
Yeah, that's
2005.
okay.
He was my holder. Sandra
remember the
D'Angelo's
name.
first year.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Mike
yeah.
was a receiver. I have quite a history with Mike, but a good history. He was the holder my first year in Calgary. So he's in the fire department, and we're actually I'm not anymore, but technically we're all on the same shift. So we can have a holder, kicker, snapper combo from the fire department.
Well,
but
they still have a flag team too, though, don't they? Like it doesn't have to be with the Stamps.
yeah, no, but
I don't know. I mean, if you get the whole team, wouldn't it be kind of fun, like entertainment wise, if we created like a small little fire truck and they drove them out, like, how they bring out the pitchers in the little golf carts. We had a little fire truck that delivered the kicking team out to, the hash marks.
I'm hearing
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
you know what I'm seeing Hollywood Lights here, Rob.
Yeah, Hollywood Lights. Yeah.
But yeah, no, the question, am I retired? I don't know. Like if they call me, I think I know I could still do it. There's no question I can do it, but will they call me? Probably not. I mean, I'm 47. I tell them I have till I'm 50.
Okay.
Till 50, I can come in and help you out.
Okay.
After 50, I might be like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to relax.
Cause you're
47.
No, I'm not that.
What?
You're 2 years removed from Saskatchewan or 3?
2 years when I played in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Oh, that was 2016.
But your last call up was a couple years ago.
With the Stamps.
Yeah.
Or with the Stamps.
Yeah.
Sorry,
2
with the
years
Stamps.
ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, the Stamps called me.
Yeah.
And that was a really cool situation. I mean, it started actually where the Montreal Alouettes needed, and it was like me taking a shot in the dark. What I always do, I just started a conversation with someone. I reached out to the old GM, Danny Machocha, and I had seen a couple of long snappers got hurt, and a couple of guys that were what they call on the street had been signed. And there wasn't a lot of on the street guys. And so I called Danny Machocha and I was like, hey, I just messaged him on Facebook. I said, Danny, what's your plan? What's your emergency plan if so-and-so goes down? He's like, well, would you be interested? I'm like, well, he's like, because we talked about you. And then this conversation started where I guess the guy they had was actually undergoing surgery and they had nobody. And their best long snapper was not the guy they wanted to be long snapping. They had a guy that was supposed to be a snapper, but he couldn't snap in the game because he actually wasn't very good. So they were wasting a spot and they're like, we want to bring you in. So this whole conversation started where I was actually going to go play a half a season with Montreal. And it was really taking wheels and the fire department was super supportive. I ran into some roadblocks with our union and WCB coverage from my work because I was actually still going to be working. And so it didn't work out. But at the same time, I got a call from actually the Stampeders long snapper and said, hey, you better be ready. And I'm like, and this is Aaron Crawford at the time. And he's like, well, he's like, when the flight rules changed, there was a lot of stuff around the vaccination. And in the playoffs, they started in November, but in December of that year, I believe it's 2021, all the regulations would change. And players that were not vaccinated would not be allowed to fly and all this stuff. So there was a lot of uncertainty. Anyhow, so then it was so weird because no one called me for a few years. And the next thing you know, I got Montreal literally ready to sign me. And there's a hiccup because of WCB that I can't go. And I get this text from a member of the Stampeders. So I call Mark Killam. I'm like, what's going on? And blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, I don't know. And it just worked out that the Stamps were like, yeah, you know what? we can't just sign you. We need to work you out. I'm like, well, I don't want to just be signed. I want to prove that I can do this. Otherwise, I'm not coming to do it. So Killam calls me. He's like, we're going to work you out this Friday. So I went in on a Friday and they had, all the scouts. They had Mahoney out there, Brendan Mahoney. They had Cole Huffnagel, a few other coaches out there just to see if I still got it. And it was kind of like an audition again. And I was like, yeah, I'm ready. I've been ready for it since I left in 2016. So I walked down the field. I snapped, I don't know, 5 or 6 balls to the punter. I did 3 field goal snaps. They're like, Chef, you got it. Let's just see if you can move. I did a few running drills and they're like, okay.
See if you can move.
And then, and that was it. And then I went home. They signed me 2 weeks later and it was cool. I went that first week of the playoffs. I was on the practice squad and it was neat because this was the cool thing. I didn't get to play. I didn't get the Hollywood ending to play in the playoffs. They got eliminated in the Saskatchewan game.
Yep.
But for me and Sheldon and I, we've been getting together a lot lately since we started podcasting and meeting with you. For me, I really thrive on connecting with people. I could care less about winning or losing, but having a really meaningful connection. And for 2 years, I was working from my kitchen table.
Right.
I did not need to put on my uniform to do my job. I had a computer. If I was on a Zoom call, I put on my uniform.
Sure.
But when I went to the
Did you wear pants?
Shorts.
Okay.
But when I went to the stadium, every day I put on my uniform. I didn't need my uniform to go to the Stampeders stadium when I went because I was working and then I had a 2-hour window where I could go to practice and then get back to work. But I put on my uniform every day. Every day I went to that locker room for a week that I was there. I put on my uniform and guys were looking at me like, whoa, wow, this guy's like, he's in his uniform. And he's coming to help us out. He's a firefighter. And it started some amazing conversations with some young guys, right? One, I knew for them, it was kind of different. So late in the year when it could get monotonous, something a little different, but it started some really good conversations with some guys about what's after football. And I had 2 or 3 guys that applied and showed interest in the fire department because of that. And I really had some meaningful engagements, even though it was a week, even though I didn't get to play in the game, I felt like I had a little impact in that locker room. And I know there's a couple of guys, I don't want to say their names because again, the process to become a firefighter is very grueling and you can be cut at any time. But there's some guys that are in the process that started when I went there. Renee had been in the process already. Renee, I think he applied maybe 2018, maybe 2019, but a few of the young guys applied or thought about that as a career after. I was able to basically tell them how awesome it is and how many of the skills from the locker room translate to firefighting and first response. And it was really, for me, it was fulfilling because I again, 2 years or a year or whatever of COVID, not really seeing people, give me an opportunity to be myself and to really enjoy. And guys, I think respected that. And it was fun. It was really cool to be part of that ride. It didn't last too long, but I worked out for them. I proved I could still do it. I could still do it now if they called me. But the meaningful exchange that I had there for the week that I was part of the team was really fun.
How do we end up reviving Chevy and Nasty? How does the podcast come about?
It's kind of a funny question. Like we've always, over the last 10 years, every time we do talk, it's almost like, geez, that's you save it for the air. That was a show. But a couple of years ago, our old employer, the old Fan 960, called us up. It was during COVID, and there's zero sports going on, and zero programming, and zero to to sell advertising for, right? So they gave us a call and said, hey, do you want to give it another try? And so we went and we shot like a teaser episode that they would take out and try to sell sponsorship to, and of course it never went anywhere. They used the content. I mean, it got played a couple of times. But it kind of got us thinking, maybe we should do this. And Chev's like, I got a lot going on in my life. I can't commit. And really, we didn't know how to get it started.
And Sheldon, just to cut in for a second, I had a health challenge. I had a health challenge a couple of years ago. So the year before I signed with the Stamps, I had a health challenge. I had a tumor in my neck that I had to get taken care of. I was like, Sheldon, you know what?
It's kind of important.
Yeah. You know what? Let's pump the brakes on it. We can always revisit, but let's figure the COVID was going on. I said, you know what? I just want to focus on a few things in my life, including my health. So I'll let you continue.
Well, then fast forward to actually it was just probably December, January. We're just catching up, and it's like we've always been those guys that are like he reached out with a text or a call. I call him back. Hey, let's grab coffee next week. Let's grab lunch. Well, it never happens. So this time, Chev's a bit of a different place in his life. He settled in with a new position. He says, Sheldon, why haven't we ever done that? Why haven't we ever just started a show? And I don't care if anybody listens other than our moms. And, you know, I'm like, you know what, Chef, to be honest with you, I've got all the gear I need right now in my studio. Everything we need, except microphones. Our audio was terrible. So we, you know, we said, well, why don't we just give it a try? So we shot one in the studio and with the bad mics, and it was echoey and kind of a pain in the butt, and it was just breaking off some rust. But you know, it felt good. You know, it was fun just to connect.
And if I could jump in for a second, before that call went to Sheldon, you know, everything was right now in my life, right? Like Sheldon said, I got the job. I got a great gal in my life. My kids are set up. Everything's set up right. And I was missing something. And what was happening too is my kids are growing up. And here I set everything up to be like there for my kids. And guess what?
They're not there for you.
The kids don't want to hang out at the YMCA. They don't want to go do stuff. They want to sit down when they're not playing sports. They want to hang out with their girlfriend. They want to play video games. They don't want to do all the stuff that I set my life up for. And I'm like, well, geez, that's kind of empty. And I went through a year and a half of COVID where I didn't see them a lot. And, you know, I don't have family in Calgary. I was like, gosh, I need to find something that brings me joy.
Right.
I need to find and what brings me joy is authentic conversations. Every time I sit down with Sheldon, it's not just like catching up, but we talk about some fun stuff. And it's always like I get charged up. And I'm a different cat. Like I get charged up by people.
Yes,
Sheldon will be the first person to say that after people, he shuts down.
Yeah, burnt out. Like,
I'm the same way.
But when Sheldon and I go, man, I just feel so good after. So I'm like, Sheldon, I want to manifest this for us. And I said that. I said, if it's just our moms that listen, let's get this going. And I said, I don't know how. I don't know what to do. I mean, this podcast thing is so foreign to us. I'm busy with kids and firefighting and all that stuff. And you're busy with drones and kids. And I said, but let's just shoot an episode and shoot another one and shoot it. And we sat down, we did some branding. We know exactly what we want to be. We know exactly what our show is,
who enjoys it and who actually tunes in and what they want to hear us talk about.
Right.
And now we just want to grow it. We want to grow it to the person that would listen to us. And that's where we're at. Like we've never spoken more than we have in the last 3 months. Since December to now, we've never, we you know, he's like my next call. He's my second to last call at night. And probably my,
sometimes
if my girl goes to bed early before you, then I'm texting you, but we've never spoken more. We've never had such good conversations. And because we've done the show, we've had some really crazy experiences, like connections to people, but also some really deep and impactful conversations with people about things that matter to them and matter to us.
No, that has been evident. That's one thing I tip my hat to both of you, is that, you know, you've been able to go and get things moving and jump into places that need your perspective. Right. I mean, we're all, let's not dance around the bush here. I mean, this is a league, the CFL is a league right now that needs more.
Yeah.
It needs more everything. And it needs more of you guys, and it needs more of us, and it needs more of everybody. And it's been fun to kind of see you guys muckraking and, you know, kicking up and stuff like that. 'Cause that's what we need. Just need more of it.
But if I can jump in, Rob, because
it's my show. You can't.
but I don't want to also misrepresent what we are, because we'd be lying if we said we're primarily just a sports show. Like when we sat down, Sheldon and I did a lot of like hours of work before we ever recorded our second episode.
Yeah.
We recorded our first one, like, oh, that was fun, but now we need to do some work. One of the things we discovered is we're different than we were when we did Chevy and Nasty on the Fan 960. We've lived a life. We've won. We've lost. We've hurt. We've failed. And that's what we want our show to reflect. It's a show about great stories and conversations for people that have been punched in the face or punched in the groin. It's what we would tell our younger selves when we were full of piss and vinegar and we were invincible.
And it's, you know, and that night that when I first met your significant other, and we're sitting around talking about these ideas, and we're trying to express what it is. And okay, so we're not just adrenaline like it used to be, right? And so we're not the bar stool.
No.
We're the campfire. We're the road trip.
Absolutely.
And that's sort of where it came from.
But football needs it.
But football needs it. And now some of the football guests we have other things to talk about that are fascinating.
Oh no, and that's fine.
But the fans, you're right. There is a lack of content there for CFL fans. The big networks certainly aren't doing the league any favors in how it's promoted. And it needs people just getting the content out to the guy that actually wants to hear some stories in February, March, April.
Yeah, right. And lately we've really been engaged. The last 3 weeks, we've really been engaged in what's been going on at Simon Fraser.
Yeah, and I do. Okay, let's talk about this a little bit, because I haven't, and that doesn't mean anything. I haven't even broached it here. It always felt to me more like a BC story. You know what I mean? If it was a Calgary story, I'd have to reevaluate it, but it felt like a BC story. You guys have turned it into a football story.
A family story. Parent story. Now, do you want me to set this up?
You start, but no, that's not true though. You got there, but why did you originally talk about it?
I was talking to my kids about, like, my kid goes to Bishop Carroll, which got an amazing music program, self-directed. There's no bells, there's no classes.
Yeah.
And I said, and we have to drive him 40 minutes every day to get to school.
Sure.
And I said to him, what would happen to you if you signed up to go to that school for the music program? Or let's say you went to Toronto for the music program.
Yep.
And you're sitting there in your second year, you're having the career of your life. You signed up, you've gone through all the hardships and trained so hard to be there.
Yep.
And one day somebody walks in and says you can't play anymore.
Yeah.
And the impact that has on the young people and the families that have entrusted their kids to go to that great football institution, great academic institution.
Not arguing.
It was wrong.
Not arguing any of that. But this, and again, let me play the role of villain here.
Sure.
And this is because I'm going to say things that I don't believe.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say things that I'm just saying them because of the situation. But the first thing I'll say is they weren't playing Canadian football. They chose not to be part of U Sports. They chose. They were not mandated. They were not demanded. They chose to go that direction. Did they not?
Yeah, they did.
They absolutely did.
That wasn't us. That wasn't, they got kicked. Now, correct me, because I am not as up to speed on the details as you are.
Totally.
But my understanding was essentially they got kicked out of the conference.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Not renewed.
Not right. Sorry.
So just to be clear, the Simon Fraser Red Leafs played in the NCAA. All their sports are NCAA.
All of, but at one point they were a CIS
school. They kind of
for a short period of time. Before that, they were NAIA.
Yeah, they were NAIA.
Oh, that's right too.
They were NAIA. Yeah. They bounced to CIS at the time, and they went back to the States. They wanted that as their athletic profile.
Right.
Destination school within Canada.
Right.
And within Canada, in the football world, I remember I started football very late in life. So I didn't have a lot of acumen as to what the programs were available. But Simon Fraser was always regarded as this real unicorn in Canada because they offered scholarships. And that's what they wanted to do for their athletes. They wanted to be a full ride scholarship school, which the CIS at the time, U Sports now, never offered.
Right.
So that's why they chose that route. They wanted to be that destination school.
And was everybody okay with that?
They were.
No. Who was they?
Who's the they you asked?
I'm talking about, if we're talking about Football Canada, if we're talking about the CFL, and if we're talking about whatever that would have been.
Well, the CFL sure was okay with it because the highest number of draft picks in the history of the CFL came from Simon Fraser.
It's always come from Simon Fraser. That's not playing the Canadian game.
Right.
Am I missing something here?
The way I look at it is like, where you're coming from. Okay, are they too good for Canadian? Does it speak badly about Canadian football? But we had Jim Mullen on our show, president of Football Canada. Yep. He seemed to be a huge fan and supporter of it. What this is choice within Canada.
Okay.
When we had the Kremlers on, Gideon Kremler, the quarterback this year, he thought it was the coolest thing that I got to stay at home and play in the NCAA. That great. Yes, he could have gone to McGill. Sure. He could have gone to UBC. He could have gone to Texas. He could have gone to Idaho.
Yep.
And also,
but he got to play NCAA football in Canada. There's nothing wrong with that.
And bear in mind, BC minor football plays NFL rules. They're the only province that plays football.
Okay.
But what happened here?
But you guys know that because you're in football,
right?
Yeah.
So, but right? This is the injustice of all. This is why it became a story for us. This is why it was the way it went down. There is an understanding that, the athletic department of the university said that it wasn't a money decision.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for those that don't know the situation, basically in the middle of exams, the athletic director summoned all the kids on the football team to tell them that the program was canceled for the 2023 season. They were competing in the Lone Star Conference, which is a Division II conference.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
contracted up to 2024.
Right. Division II football in the United States, there's no real conferences for schools west of Colorado.
Right.
So they had to play in this basically primarily Texas conference.
Yep.
The conference basically decided to unaffiliate them for the 2024 season.
Yep.
So they did not have a home to play with, or a place to play in 2024.
Yeah.
They still had a full schedule of games ahead of them in 2023. So instead of playing out that season, looking for solutions, which would have included going to NEIA and asking for reinstatement, going to U Sports and figuring out a way. Instead of doing all those things, the athletic director dropped the program, obviously in conjunction with the president of the university, brought the kids in, told them that it was done, and said, well, you know, the process to apply to U Sports is very complex. Therefore, we didn't even make an application.
No, it's outside. Don't worry.
Yeah. I was just making sure that wasn't my truck.
You know, that's your truck.
That was my dramatic pause.
Oh, that was your dramatic. I thought you heard the beeping.
But so what I'm saying is, you got all these kids, hopes and dreams, families that worked for that opportunity, and you didn't even go to bat for them. There's obviously something more.
But it's interesting. But it's interesting, Sheldon, that you lead with a music example, right? If it was a,
I apply it to my kid.
No, right? and it works for my kid too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and I'm so jaded that when we leave things like this in the hands of bureaucrats, bureaucrats, but government-funded institutions and those types of things, it just seems like this is the fight we're going to pick. What about when they raise?
So that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
Because at first, when I first saw the headline, I'm like, "Are you kidding me? They're now canceling football in Canada. This is ridiculous. What's on the other channel?" Right? That was my first. That was my first take on it.
Yep.
Then where I've started really get engaged was when I heard that a group of 5 students were going down to the courthouse to file an injunction.
Okay.
And to me, it's like for me, oh, I'm sorry something bad happened to you. What are you going to do about it? Well, these kids were fighting back, or at least doing what was in their power.
Yeah.
And it was at that point where I saw, and that's a big thing to take on an academic institution like Simon Fraser. And it was at that point that, Chevy's like, geez, I think we got to talk about this. I'm like, it's like the Ukraine. Everybody expected the Ukraine to roll over and fold in the first month.
Absolutely.
And then it'd no longer be a story.
Right.
But these kids are making it a story, and they're backed by some really powerful alumni and legal people. And
it's the music program example that you brought up that, I worry that if that happened, that they wouldn't have that same profile available to them to help. Right. Because Farhan Lalji, Glenn Suter, you guys, I mean, it's a who's who of lining up and saying, we're not putting up with this. We got to fight this. And God bless. I think it's great that Rob, you guys are doing it.
For every cause, a champion's got to rise up. In the music program, maybe it's Brian Adams that went to that music program and says, man, I got to care about this. But otherwise it dies.
What got taken out of so many schools, though, in the 90s and 2000s, right?
Well, and that's kind of what I'm thinking about is that, again, maybe I was in the ACAC in the 90s, and I saw a real effort. Like it's a little bit silly that this country has college sports, university sports, and the twain shall never meet. Right? Mount Royal was an ACAC college. They become a university, so their program moves up. I saw the State Trojans were a model program, basketball, hockey programs. They applied for CIS. No, you're not a university, that sort of thing. So college university sports jades me a little bit, because it's really what we need is a divisional system. We need university sports. And if you're a college, maybe you play Div 2. And if you have a really good volleyball program, maybe it goes to Div 1. That's equal access to me. Right.
I think that's a great call. I mean, if we could have something structured like that, like in different divisions, that's fantastic, and offer all students across Canada the same kind of opportunities. Talking to Jim Mullen, one of the things we're seeing coming out of Quebec right now is, and this is to I know we don't have Title IX here, but trying to equal opportunity for boys and girls.
Yep.
Right. So now they're introducing flag football for women, scholarships for flag football.
Yes.
Now you have a lot less players on a team, but you can get that into SAIT, SIAST, all the smaller schools. All
of those programs. That's how we would grow the sport.
And if we take it to football again,
sure.
Sheldon and I we talked about the show wanting to be a bit bigger and a bit more than just football. We want it to be life. Well, football is the thing that taught us some life lessons that Sheldon and I would never have gotten anywhere else. And we want to be able to afford those same opportunities for other kids.
Sure.
Now that's through football. There are many opportunities in many, whether it's music, different types of sports, but football historically, even when I was in university, was always sort of under attack. Well, it's football. There's 60 players, predominantly males. It's violent, all that. And right now it doesn't look good on a, let's say, social landscape. But when we had Jim come in and first of all, football is a very diverse sport. And when you talk about Simon Fraser football, we had the mom on as well, not just Gideon Kremler. We had his mom on to talk about what that team meant to them. You talk about kids, like their team was made up of 30% of the kids were from the USA. It's the only probably makeup like that in Canada where American kids actually get exposed to Canadian culture and vice versa. And we have people from so many different socioeconomic fronts in football. From community football here in Calgary, no child ever has to pay for a helmet or pads. It's one of the most, it's more accessible than soccer. I signed my son up for soccer and it's over $1,500. I'm like, there's a ball and cleats. And football is like maybe $400 registration and you get everything provided. It's always been an accessible sport. So there are some really green flag things that we don't celebrate about that sport and what it does to mentor young men. But sorry, just
and women.
Well, and women. But when Jim came on, not only did he talk about the merits of having a tackle football system in Canada, but all the work they've been doing on a Football Canada wide scale to promote football in not just with males and females, but different cultures. He mentioned that the Canada Cup in flag football this year, so the Canadian Championship, is going to have an Indigenous female team competing for the national championship. That's unprecedented, and it starts in a female division. So well,
it's not unprecedented because you're talking about an Indigenous team at a national championships. Lacrosse has that.
No, but within football. Football.
I'm sorry, my mistake. I thought you were talking about within sport.
No, within football and started in the women's division. And so there are strides being made, but football is always seen as this real, what I would say, exclusive club. But it's not. It's very inclusive, and people have opportunities to participate.
No, and I'm not taking a shot at football. And again, I'm gladly taking the role of villain in this because it needs to parch out that conversation. But what football is doing is what all sports should be doing, and it's not look at football. It's like, why aren't we doing this? Right. And good on football for doing it because there are other sports. But I was at the Booster Club last night, and the Pentathlon Fencing Club won a scholarship because they're creating a wheelchair fencing program. Right?
Are you into fencing, or is this a organization you're working with?
It was just the Booster Club last night at their awards banquet, and they gave away a scholarship to this group that is doing this. So again, it comes back to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right. And football needs to do that because football football's always had that Title IX in the States piece, right? It funded all the sports because it was the most popular sport, but it never had a female piece to it until now. And now, again, this is how we grow the sport. This is how inclusion and everybody, and we play. It is a great, unfortunately, the problem that your sport has, and now I'm putting it back on you guys, like I have no ownership on this, but if we invented football today, it would be illegal.
100%.
Right?
Yes.
So now it needs to adapt. It needs to adapt, and it's adapting. I'm ecstatic when you're telling me that the head of Football Canada is talking like this.
Yes,
that's adapting.
But in this particular issue, with Simon Fraser dropping their football team,
right,
the way it was done,
without
any consultation. There was no consultation to the alumni. There was no consultation to anyone involved, any stakeholders, parents, no one. It was dropped like a bomb in the middle of the night while they were in finals, when they did have an option.
My only pushback to that is, and it's not justification, but it's also not unprecedented. I think if you dug deep, you would find other programs and other music programs, drama programs, sports teams across this country have had the same treatment, and it'll always be the same thing. Why? Why did they do it?
Yeah, but it's not right.
No, it doesn't make it. I'm not saying.
Right.
I'm not saying it makes it right, Randy. I'm just saying let's not portray this story as unprecedented.
But
when you ask why did they do it, and then they come out and say it's not. They said it's not money related. And
cool.
Take it for what it's worth,
yeah,
right?
I know. Like we're all old guys around this table. We know it's all money related. It's always money related.
There's sometimes it's agendas.
But then you got Amar Doman.
But it's taking that money and putting it somewhere else. Then, so it is money.
So it's money. So it's money.
But you got Amar Doman.
They just spent $2 million on their.
I believe I started this program by saying it'll be a bunch of guys yelling at each other, talking over each other.
$20 million.
Oh yeah, they just spent $20 million on a stadium 2 years ago.
On a brand new stadium. Amar Doman, president of the BC Lions, owner of the BC Lions, said, "If it takes a check, I'm going to write a check."
I'll write the check.
Yeah.
So we've got people stepping up. One of the neat things that we've always understood about football across Canada, and I've seen it at the community level, into university level, and it is unfortunate about the sport, is that it's very siloed. So
that's not unprecedented either.
No, but it's unfortunate in a sport that has such, like you said, if it was started today, it'd be illegal.
But it just goes back to the same thing. Why is it siloed? Money. You might take my money. I might not get my money. My players might give you my money. My money will go over here.
Right.
Yeah. It's never what is good for the kid.
And that's exactly what you're talking about with the difference between the two different leagues in college football.
Yeah.
But at some point, we're going to have to outgrow that, or else that's why so many times Canadian sports are looked at as, second rate.
Right.
We got to figure this out.
Right. I mean, God bless you guys for doing this. I really mean that. Like, I'm glad you guys, and to me, it's a great not opportunity. It was kismet that it happened when you guys were back because we had your voices in it. You had, tell the story. What time was the Jim Mullen?
Jim Mullen was 2 Thursdays ago. He came,
10:30 at night.
Yeah, he came
right.
Like that? Yeah, he came right out of the courtroom with the boys, and he came on the show with us to talk to us. And
so is TSN doing that?
No, and
you know what I mean. No. That's my point.
Not only that, after it was great talking with Jim Mullen and talking with these, as old guys that played. Yeah. But it wasn't until Chevy was on Twitter the next day, putting it out there, calling out, "Hey, where's our football moms?" And the football moms responded.
Right.
And that's where we got on Lana Kremler and her son Gideon, who is launching the. We saw the faces behind the fight, and that's the voice that we wanted to talk to.
Correct.
It doesn't matter what us old guys think.
Correct.
Who are the people that are involved? And we're not journalists by any means.
No.
But those were the best stories.
But that's okay, because the journalists will come if you surface the story. You guys surface the story. You said something before. You got to have champions. You're 100% right. You are 100% right. So when I say to you, Randy, this isn't unprecedented, don't worry about it. That's not your responsibility to take care of gymnastics or anything like that. You guys are doing football. You've done football brilliantly.
In our lane.
Yeah. No, it's not a matter of staying in your lane, but you found something passionate. So God bless you for doing it. I did want to talk. We got a couple minutes here. Okay. You also picked a fight with a Rough Rider broadcaster.
Well, I didn't pick a fight, actually. I think he picked a fight with me.
No. It's never. Sheldon, it's always everybody on them.
So it was a Sunday night. Yeah. I had watched my first XFL 2023 game, and I thought, it was some pretty good football. I wrote something to the effect that as a developmental league and a path to the NFL, it's great that these options exist. Being a football guy, knowing how limited the amount of jobs are when you leave college, it's great that there are more jobs and opportunity. But to have a path that can lead to the NFL that's not exactly through the draft, because I was an outlier. I was an outlier in my career. If I didn't have late opportunities, I might not have played. I was glad for that. So I wrote something to that effect. And I also wrote that, you know what? There might be some Canadians that would take this path. Maybe before going to CFL, seeing if they could sign with an XFL team, spring league, play for a year or two, get a shot at the NFL. If it doesn't work out, they can come to Canada. Yep. So Michael Ball, voice of the Rough Riders, I think he took offense.
Here's a little known fact. Voice of the Estevan Bruins the year before I was.
Oh, there you go.
Really?
Yes.
There you go.
I think he took a little bit of offense to a reply from Dave Naylor. I think they've got a little online
I miss
beef.
Dave.
I think they've got an online beef. But then at some point, he was kind of attacking me, saying I should be ashamed for my opinion, saying that Canadians would go there.
Well, you said you were embarrassing. Your position
was embarrassing. And it's I'm only embarrassed if my mom tells me I should be embarrassed about something. Anyone else, it doesn't bug me. But I did stick to my truth. And my truth is, like, if you're a Canadian kid and NFL says, hey, listen, go to the XFL for a year or two, get some seasoning in the American game and come back and see us. Any Canadian kid would do that. And he said, no Canadian kid in their right mind would sign with an XFL team. I was like, well, when your sport becomes your business, you look at things differently than when you were a fan. And that's all I said. But
he's not in Estevan anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like you're moving on and moving up.
Didn't you find, and I texted you this.
Yeah.
Didn't you guys find, and I don't know Michael, I followed him. I don't know him. I just feel that sometimes those guys in that one market, in that one job, play a role. They play a role.
You know what? I've met a couple of them and know them now fairly well. I'm not convinced it's a role. I mean, I think being a guy from Saskatchewan, growing up in that, and yeah, sure, it gets played up a little bit, but there's something about when you get involved with that program in that city, in that province, you drink the Kool-Aid. You're surrounded by it. It is such a bubble.
But it's an elevated position. It's different than. There's no equivalent in Alberta. Even the voice of the Oilers isn't the same, right? Or the voice of the Flames isn't the same.
No, there's no.
That I said that to Rod Peterson long time ago. Like, I get it. Dude can't go into Walmart in Regina without people coming up to him and making demands. And I just think after a while, you kind of lose sight. You almost get that Messiah complex where now I am the protector and savior of 100%. All football. I shall tell you, former CFL player, how to think and be embarrassed about it. That there was a little holier than thou component.
But I think that's comes with the position. Like, it is
I do too.
Unique.
I do too.
You know, when you were a kid and you used to watch Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage when they teamed up and then they fell apart, and then you chose this guy's a good guy, this guy's a bad guy, and you believed it.
Yeah.
When I played for the Riders and I came and signed with the Stamps, I used to love playing in Calgary. I see guys from my high school, from all over that. Hey, Nasty, let's go Riders. The next year I see, I'm telling the story a little bit wrong. I'd be seeing these guys wearing, when I signed with the Stamps, they were excited to see me. I see them every game. They're season ticket holders. Yeah. And then when the Riders came to town, you effing traitor. Yeah. I'm like, well, what are you doing here? Are you on vacation? Well, I work here. Well, so do I.
Yep.
But it's that mentality that football is everything. And it's sometimes it's hard to understand.
It's out of whack. Yeah. It's out of whack. They care. And this is not a shot. This is not a shot at Stamps fans, Elk fans, not Elks. Elks is not a word. Elk is plural. You don't add an S to that.
Agreed.
Jeez,
Thank you.
Louise. It's not a knock against anybody else's fan base, but they care on a way different level, in a way different space. And it's like they want to fight. They're like your drunk uncle who wants to fight all the time. I don't want to fight you. It's just I don't care. But you must. I'm drunk and I'm fighting now.
Well, and further to our conversation,
I'm not suggesting anybody that Rider fans are drunk. I'm just saying your drunk uncle.
But I was being very matter of fact in that conversation. I brought it to the point that the NFL sees the CFL as a minor league. I had to explain that
always has.
The CFL is a minor league in the football landscape. It's not a developmental league.
No.
The XFL and USFL are minor leagues that are developmental leagues. 100%. So anyhow,
100%.
I think he took real offense to me calling him minor league. And I'm like, listen, the CFL cannot get out of its own way historically, whether it's marketing, on field, the blunders and the mishaps. They do minor league things, therefore they are a minor league. Otherwise, it would be bigger than they are. Yep. And my 3 kids who grew up in a CFL locker room with trophies on the wall and Grey Cup rings on my finger would actually know one player in a CFL team, but they don't.
Right.
So anyhow, that kind of went on Twitter, and people were kind of siding with me. Truthfully, they and I heard all the words. Like, people were being really mean. It became personal.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you know me, like, I've done a lot of work with bully prevention throughout my career across Canada. And I was like, man, I see a real opportunity here to do something bigger than sports. Because again, back to our show, I said, Sheldon, we're a sports, that's our anchor. We'll draw people in, but I want to be bigger than that. I want to do things that maybe it's the delusions of grandeur, but I want to do something that's bigger than just sports. And I said, this is a great opportunity to change what everyone says they hate about the internet, which is everyone takes one side or the other. Mm-hmm. People were sending me pictures of this guy saying, oh, this is the guy you're fighting with. And it was like, it was ugly. And I was like, you know what? I said, Sheldon, I'm reaching out to Michael Ball, and he's coming on our show, and we're going to talk about it like men. And he came on our show, and he was gracious. He came on our show, and I don't know him well. Like, I met him once when I played in Saskatchewan for 3 games. I said, Sheldon, this could be a train wreck. It could go off the rails real quick.
Yep.
I said, Sheldon, you're going to be the referee. And it wound up being awesome because we each described what we thought. He talked about why he thought it was hard for him as a CFL fan, a Canadian Football League fan, to hear a guy who played 16 years talk about the league like it was minor league. And I talked about why, as a 16-year player in that league that saw so many things done wrong while I was there and never done right, why we were where we are. And we found some common ground. Sheldon did an excellent job refereeing us.
But you think it's hard for me to get a word in edgewise when it's just me and Chevy?
Yeah.
Him and Ballsy. Oh my God. Sparks were flying. I didn't have to do too much. So you guys really, by the end of it, I mean, there's a lot of agreement in terms of understanding that the league needs to do better. Ballsy's not the enemy. You're not the enemy. And that some real work has to be done with the league.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I agree with. No, but again, it's what I love about what you guys have done in such a short time is you didn't come back as a novelty act. You didn't come back as, hey, you remember 12? Let me tell you the story I told you 13 years ago.
Yeah.
You came back and you brought some energy back into it. Anyway, I'm getting tagged here because our next guest is ready to go. So I've run it. Somehow I've managed to run this thing out of time.
Well, if I could say just next guest, speaking of next guest, tonight we're actually going to be interviewing Doug Brown. So Doug Brown is a great CFL alumnus, played with Winnipeg forever. He's also a SFU alumnus.
Very cool.
Between the time I called him to see if he would appear on our show, and yesterday, Jim Mullen, who was the first we had about this Save SFU football, says, you got to get Doug Brown on the show. And I'm like, well, we already got him coming on Monday. We're recording tonight. And I was like, why? He's like, well, he is leading the charge with a bunch of alumni that are going to get their names removed off the SFU Hall of Fame. So that's some big stuff.
This is a football story.
Yes.
This is really, it's gone and become early on, I just thought, oh, this is a academic, government funding story. It's not. It's a football story. And you guys have helped get it there by the people you brought on and the way you've talked about it. So God bless.
Yeah. Next week, we're going to talk about chicken sandwiches. That's our next one. The best chicken sandwich
I would
in town.
expect nothing less than a 300-pound poetry on Nashville hot chickens. And by the way, you should go down the street here because this place is awesome.
I think we might.
We're going to add it to our taste test list. We got 4 restaurants.
Yeah. There you go.
Nashville hot chicken.
Okay,
Rob, thanks so much.
Rob, we're not done. Where can we find the podcast?
Oh, Sheldon.
Well, right now it's called The Ride with Chevy and Nasty.
Okay.
We're just about to upload everything onto Apple and Spotify. The easiest place to find us right now is on YouTube at Chevy and Nasty. Instagram, Facebook at The Ride with Chevy and Nasty. No, at Chevy and Nasty.
At Chevy and Nasty, and Twitter as well.
And Twitter. And we're just getting all set up to take it out onto the audio version for podcast. But,
it's awesome, guys. I'm so glad you guys are back. I'm so glad you can make some time for us. Hopefully you'll do this again. I don't know. You don't need to anymore. You got your own show.
No, we love meeting people. So anytime
we love meeting people. Yeah.
This takes us back to our very first day in this industry, right?
Yeah,
so it's awesome. We
appreciate
everything you've done for us.
We did it in the crowd during the motor crowd while they were practicing, and I thought all of us were going to die from
carbon monoxide.
You guys, it was the most intimidating thing I'd ever seen in my life because I didn't know you guys from a hole in the ground.
And we were going to be playing the Ottawa Red Blacks that week. And we did the first segment with you. And the second segment, we were like, yeah, we got a show. And he's like, well, what is it? I'm like, Chevy and Nasty. He's like, okay, you're on. And you let us go. And I remember we talked about Josh Ronick and Kerry Joseph. That's what we talked about for a full segment.
I remember that now. Because you guys just came on as guests.
Yeah.
And then we just morphed into a show.
I was teasing you about, so this is your job? Like you just sit here and talk sports with guys? Like this is
you
easy.
guys do it.
Yeah.
You guys are the best. Thanks for doing this.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob.
There you go. Sheldon Napstuk, Randy Chevrier. Chevy and Nasty show. Check it out. Ride with Chevy and Nasty. Our guests brought to you by the Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. 76 years, 3 locations, McLeod Trail by Chinook Center, 17th Avenue Southwest, and Bow Ridge Northwest. We are live in the Oodle Noodle studio. We bring the heat. Try buttered chicken, mac and cheese, Kung Pao noodles, Bangkok pad thai, classic vegetarian gluten friendly options. 2 locations for pickup and delivery, 1244 17th Ave Southwest and 105 Main Street North in Airdrie. Coming up on Wednesday, speaking of blast from the past, our old pal Bruce Dobigan in studio. He's got a new book coming out. We're going to talk to him about that. But it's Monday. That means we have to spend some time with the managing editor of FlamesNation, our good friend Ryan Pike. And again, brought to you by Ski Sellers Snowboard, skisellersnowboard.com. Yes, it's springtime here and the snow is melting, but in the mountains, there's still room for a little skiing. So if you want to get out, get some great deals right now at any of these Ski Seller Snowboard locations, skisellersnowboard.com. Ryan Pike joins us this afternoon. Not much going on since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, you were away last week, and so we didn't chat, and then nothing happened. So
nothing happened. No,
we have 14 days of nothing going on.
Nothing happened. The Flames finished the season, went quietly into the night. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah, right? Nothing to talk about. So I guess, do you want to talk about, we could talk about the field house, I guess. At some point, we're going to have to talk about the field house because it's very quietly moving along in the background. I know the arena stuff for, folks who follow this and other platforms will be aware that we've been spending a lot of time talking about the arena, for better or for worse. Yep. The field house is moving along quietly and surprisingly quickly. So, the city has some money for it. They have a committee. They're putting some stuff together. They have a plan. I think they're banding about a couple different options for how much stuff they want to include in it. But
right,
yeah, there's that's going well. I don't think that's the biggest story in the city right now. But
no,
it's something to definitely keep an eye on.
It wouldn't say it's the biggest story. And hard to ask you to go back and recreate the way you felt. But your thoughts a week ago. Were you surprised? I'll say this, Ryan. I was a little bit shocked by some fairly significant names in sports media saying, "Oh, I was surprised when." I mean, I wasn't surprised. I'm surprised that they agreed to disagree and kind of separate.
I'd say yes and no. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, there's 32 of those jobs, and they are very highly coveted jobs. They are jobs that, compared to the majority of jobs in hockey ops, are very well compensating, but they're also like very taxing jobs. I mean, John Maloney in his conversation with the media on a week ago, I don't think he could completely disclose what happened because I don't think he feels like that's his place. At some point when Brad Treliving feels that the time is right, I think we'll definitely get a more thorough undertaking and understanding about what happened. But, Don was very astute when he pointed out, this is a 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months a year gig, and it can be very taxing. And I don't think it's telling tales out of school to suggest that the relationship that Brad Treliving had with Daryl Sutter wasn't all smiles and sunshine and unicorns. I think Nazem Kadri, when he was asked the preceding Friday about the team's relationship with the coach, and he brought up, without really referencing the coach in particular, he brought up the idea that you're with the same people for 9 months of the year, and it's not always going to be. I think he used the phrase sunshine and butterflies. Yeah, it's not all going to be unicorns and rainbows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when you're dealing with people, especially, I've gotten to know Brad Treliving, fortunately enough, over the last decade. He has a really strong philosophy about what hockey is and how hockey should be played and how teams should be constructed. And for better or for worse, Daryl Sutter has a very well honed and well cemented philosophy. And I don't think it's telling tales at school to surmise that they probably didn't see eye to eye on everything. We saw the Flames bring up Matthew Phillips, and Matthew Phillips sort of sat around for a couple weeks. And I know folks will compare the Matthew Phillips situation to the Jacob Pelche situation. I have done that in the past too, in some ways. I'll say this. There's a difference between, a 21-year-old kid in his second year pro who's never been up before, who's never been around the NHL team before. Having him sit around and do practice for a couple weeks, especially when the NHL club is sort of in the thick of a playoff race. Okay, I get it. Matthew Phillips mid-season, it's a different situation. It's a guy who's got a lot more experience. There's a lot more water under that bridge, and you feel like you probably know the player better than Pelche. So I think the use of the young players was possibly a point of contention. I think some of his public comments, I've heard through various channels that Jonathan Huberdeau's camp and the locker room in general apparently were not particularly enthused by his taking a shit comments to one of I asked the question. He left a game, and you've done this dance. We never get good information from a coach asking about an injured player after the game, but you got to ask. Yep. So I asked, and that's what we got. Yep. So that didn't really, I don't think that won the coach a lot of favors with the locker room. I don't think what numbers Jacob Pelche comments won him a lot of favor with management or the locker room. I don't think at any point the coach and the GM ever on any team see completely eye to eye. I don't think the coach in the locker room on any team completely see eye to eye at any given point. That's just how things go.
Right.
But I think, to circle the square, the idea that this is a tough job in this market for this team, with the way things work in Calgary, it's a tough job. It can wear on you. And I think based on the contract he was offered and the work situation that it looked like he was going to be returning to at least for one more season, I think Brad Treliving just looked at his options and went, nah, not for me. Not for me.
I agree. And you and I both do the same thing. We, you consume a lot of the media and Elliot Friedman to me is must listen to. His partner, but Elliot Friedman is must listen to. And Elliot, Chris Johnston, Frank Saravelli, on and on it goes. All the NHL insiders have said the same thing all year long, that it was not harmonious, but they've all said the same thing too, that, Daryl's a good man, which he is. Sometimes you just don't get along. So that's the reality of the situation. I thought it was a little bit interesting last Tuesday that Elliot came out with, well, I've heard from people at the team and Daryl and Brad get along fine as friends or, away from the rink. It's really more of a working relationship thing. So it was important somebody in this organization to point that out. The horse is out of the barn. I mean, I think sometimes we get too fancy, and I'm guilty of it too, fancy with the words. Daryl and Tree were not on the same page. Daryl was not on the same page with some of his players. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's the situation. And don't forget, and we got a prime example of it in that same press conference you referenced, I'm not allowed to use the word rebuild. Jay Feaster went through this. You'll remember Jay Feaster on TSN prior to the season after they traded Iginla and Bouwmeester. My job's to make the playoffs. My job is to make the playoffs every year, right? He got ridiculed for that. Those are the marching orders. That's what Murray Edwards pays you to do. That's how this is going to work. So I agree with you. I think at the end of the day, what you were offered, what the situation was going to be, the terms of it, I'll just take a break right now. Thank you very much.
And I'll say this for Brad Treliving. Jay Feaster was very adamant and open with the marching orders he was given, for better or for worse. Brad Treliving is a pro, not to say Jay wasn't, but Brad Treliving has never really spoken about, this is ownership told me to do X. And, I give him credit for that. And I think, you have a shield potentially to use if people don't like your moves. You can say, oh, the boss has told me to do it. Brad never really did that.
But you can't do that. You can't do that while you're employed.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
The minute you put it back on that's what Jay, that's why Jay said, it's my job. It's my job. My job is to get this team in the playoffs. I swear to God, those were the words that he was told. It's your job to get this team in the playoffs. I'm not accepting a rebuild. And I get it. I understand it. It's business speak. It's all a whole bunch of hooey as far as I'm concerned, because we all know, we can all see with our own eyes, a team that needs a rebuild and a team that's prepared. Ryan, off the top of your head, the highest this team has ever drafted is number-wise. Right. Twice.
In Calgary, fourth. They drafted second twice in Atlanta, but in Calgary, fourth.
But in Calgary, 4 times. Twice.
Yeah. Hey, right? let's not have Jacques Richard erasure in this program.
No. We will not go back into the no, absolutely not. But the problem, and the point I'm trying to make is, yes, you're competitive on some level all the time, but that means a lot of the time you're fair to middling. And when you're fair to middling, like this 16th overall pick, you salivate over, but it's not that, right? Like, you and I both know the percentages. If you're truly going to turn a franchise around, where do you need to be? Top 3, right?
Yeah. But it's no guarantee either. I mean,
no, it's no guarantee either. Absolutely not. And most rebuilds take 2. Like Chicago had 2 rebuilds. People forget that.
How bad and how long was Buffalo bad before? Like just this season is when
how
Buffalo
long was Edmonton
started
bad?
to get up.
Edmonton was supposed to turn around with Gagne and Magliano.
The folks that sign my checks frequently talk to me about the decade of darkness.
God bless them. We all have our crosses to bear. And again, call it critical. I guess it's critical of ownership, whatever it is. It's the reality of the situation. It's a reality of the situation. There is no team in the NHL that has been as good at being in the middle as this one. Right? Am I wrong?
And
they're in its history.
Yeah. They're, you know, I like, I'll carry a small bit of water for these guys in the sense that when you have a Jerome McGinley and a Mika Kiprusoff, I understand the temptation to go, yeah, but as long as you have Mika Kiprusoff and he's playing like Mika Kiprusoff, you got a chance. And I'll accept, you know, that I can understand the temptation there. Yep, and when you have a Jerome McGinley, and then, you know, as soon as they clear those out, I think you had 1 year. I'll say this. I think the best / worst thing that this happened to the organization was that find away flame season.
I was just thinking the same thing myself. Was, and you can probably say it better than I can because you could back it up with data, but that was unsustainable.
No,
right?
That was one of the worst PDO teams in the NHL to get in. And they got in based on the fact that, you know, they had a redonkulous amount of third period comebacks. And, you know, when basically anytime they needed a goal, they got a goal. Every time they needed a prodigious save, they got it. And then they happened to have you know, they were matched up in the playoffs against the only team maybe as bad or worse than them, the Vancouver Canucks that year.
Yep.
And they beat them. They were tasked with beating a team that was inferior to them, and they beat them. And then they got they got trucked by a very good.
It wasn't close.
Their luck ran out, and they were out for matched.
Yep.
But I think, you know, the legacy of Jay Feaster was, you know, he would, you know, his catchphrase was intellectual honesty. Mm-hmm. And the idea was you got to be honest about what you are and what you have. And I think the challenge was, if you look at the moves that Brad Treliving made in the summer of 2014, it was, okay, we need some guys that'll fill some gaps in for us until the kids are ready. So you go out and you sign Mason Raymond for 3 years. You go out and sign Derek England for 3 years. You go out and you sign Jonas Hiller, guys who are sort of stopgap guys, all due respect to the players, but they understand what they were. And then you get Devin Sadaguchi to fill in a gap. You get, like, they filled in a lot of gaps really nicely in their roster. And then I think the kids progressed faster than they expected. And B, I think they took the development of the kids as a proxy for the development of the group, which did necessarily correlate.
That's a great way of putting it.
And then that sort of began the wobble back and forth because, you know, you don't go out and, for lack of a better term, throw a bunch of draft capital to get Dougie Hamilton if you don't think you're close. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you think you're close, it's a great move. If you think you're a year or two away, losing that many high draft picks, especially when you punted on a couple of guys at the trade deadline to get those picks, it's a challenge. So, I mean, that's he had his marching orders, and I think he achieved a march. And I'll say this: I think Brad Treliving did far more good than harm as a GM. I think the organization, if you compare it to where the Flames are now to where the Flames were when Jay Feaster left, or even when Brian Burke hired Brad Treliving, it's like night and day. Like, just look at the calendar. On Wednesday, the Flames minor league affiliate is going to head into the playoffs as the number 1 team in minor pro hockey in the world.
Right.
You don't. That just doesn't happen.
I said off the top, I had a bone to pick with you, so I will pick said bone now. And I don't know if it's with you, but you're the managing editor. Why am I reading articles about the mess that Brad Treliving left? Can you enlighten me into what the mess is? And I'm charging into this fully aware that I may be way off base on this.
A farm system that has pieces, but not a lot of high in depth. Part of that is you gamble and you roll the dice and you trade a first round pick in 2022. Granted, it would have been a late first round pick for Tyler Toffoli, so you don't get a fairly good prospect in your system. They did the same thing in 2018 with Travis Hamonic. Yep. You know, for better or for worse, so Valimaki left for nothing. Yes. They have 7 guys who are a year away from being pending UFAs. Mm-hmm. And the sentiment, at least what they said publicly to the media, was very, you know, some guys are, let's talk about contract. And some guys are, let's see. So you have that. And, if you look at the bodies that they do have signed long-term, a lot of them are the wrong side of 30. So they have a lot of cap hit tied up in guys that are past the apex or post apex or very close to their apex. You're not really going to get a lot of surplus value for those contracts going forward. There's a few guys you could. I think, looking at the cap friendly chart, I really think that Blake Coleman contract was sneaky good.
Yeah.
Especially for what he gives. Yeah. But that's sort of a backlandy contract where Blake Coleman's not going to give you the kind of offense that makes you go, damn, thank God they're giving him $5 million a year. Yeah. But everything else he does, you like. But 10-5 for Nazem Kadri. If he's anything close, if he's close to last year's Nazem Kadri, you're nervous. If he's close to this year's Nazem, or if he's close to the 2021 Nazem Kadri or 21-22 Nazem Kadri, you're pretty happy. But that's a gamble. So.
See,
you also have sort of the coaching situation where you have.
How's that his fault? See,
he hired the guy though.
He didn't. I don't think he did.
He did a hell of a job defending the signing then.
What's that?
He did a hell of a job defending the signing then.
But that's what you do. That's your job, Ryan. Your job, my job, my job is to speak well of my employer and everything like that. Like, again, what does everybody expect? What do you expect? If your owner wants a certain guy as the coach, you get him. That's the marching orders. If the Nation Network wants me to do all pickleball starting next week, I've got a decision to make, don't I? So I object to these, this whole thing about a mess. Honestly, if the coach had played the young guys, if he had played Matty Phillips, if he found a way to get Wolf here, don't you think we'd be praising him on the way out? I think there's a mess. I'm not saying there isn't a mess, but I'm not 100% sure this is the GM's mess.
Yeah, and honestly, I think if you look at the way that he built the team, like I'll concede this.
Thank you.
If the team has a better season, you look at those seven, you look at the 7 pending UFAs and go, okay, we'll see what's happening. But they have to jettison a body no matter what to basically give themselves any kind of cap flexibility. And, the cap isn't the GM's fault, but it also is because he's the one who signed the contract.
He manages to the cap. He manages the cap. Absolutely. He gives.
And we're also talking about, the same guy who signed Johnny Gaudreau to a deal when he did or didn't. I mean, there was something on the table by all accounts a summer ago. Granted, Johnny Gaudreau coming off of a not great season with a year left, and they had lengthy conversations, and he could have re-signed the best player on the team with a year left and not had to go through the drama, but then didn't work out. Same with Tkachuk. I mean, I'll say this for Tkachuk, like the Flames were coming off of that 14-15 year, and then the 15-16 year was a disappointment, but granted, a disappointment fueled by their underlying numbers also cratering fairly significantly for them. But they looked at the group they had and went, okay, what do you want to do? And they the same thing in 2019 when his contract was up with Calgary, when Tkachuk's contract was up, and they went, what do you want to do? And they could have moved some money out. They didn't move any money out. They tried a lot of different options. They didn't really like the offers they were given, so they opted. They looked at a team that finished first in the division, first in their conference in 18-19, and went, let's keep them together. Why not? Yeah. And so so a lot of the decisions that Brad Treliving made were defensible, completely defensible, but also decisions that you make in hindsight going, if he does one of those things differently, not just all of them, just one of the things, life could have been a lot different for everyone.
But and I'm not, this is such a base argument, which outside of Colorado, who couldn't we say that about for the last 2 years?
Tampa Bay.
They didn't win last year. Right? And somebody in Tampa Bay is mad about that. I don't know if many are mad about that.
Three trips to the finals in 3 years and conference finals in how many years in a row? Like, I'm sure.
Four is what's his name?
Yeah. I'm sure they would have liked to have a parade, but maybe they're just getting tired of parades there. I don't know.
Listen, I love the fact that we have the the opportunity to write this stuff and put it out there. I just wanted to push back on the mess part because I don't think that's a fair I don't think that's a fair evaluation of the situation. I think historically, there's some things in this organization that keep it in the middle. I just think as an organization, it plays it safe. It stays in the middle. It won't commit to a scorched earth. Fair enough. And it's always said because, that's not what our season ticket holders want. Fair enough. You own the team. You get to make the rules. That's fine. 100%.
But for all the hand-wringing about Murray Edwards reportedly being hands-on with the team,
he's the only one?
Yeah. If the operating budget for the team, Rob, is probably what, 9 figures? Like the NHL cap is almost 90 million. So you're looking at probably, low 9 figures for operating budget. And if I'm spending $100-ish million on my sports organization, I want to be looped in. I want to know what's going on.
No. And I'm glad you brought that up. I am glad you brought that up because that's the norm, right? That's not Murray Edwards is not some sort of unicorn in ownership. Look at Eugene Melnick. Look at Aquilini. Look at Vegas, right? Look at Tom Dundon in Carolina. On and on and on and on it goes. You spend the money, you get to make the decisions. But at the same token, if you're tasking your employees to carry out things that aren't working, and they're not the ones that should have to carry the water. I'm saying I don't think this is Brad Treliving's mess. I think this is a Calgary Flames mess, and they've got to clean it up.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair to say. And in
defense of fair, I'm good with fair.
In defense of Robert in his headline, he didn't say Brad Treliving left his mess. He said he left
semantics, sir. I surrender to you on semantics. Yes. No, but it's a fair point. I just saw that and I go, I don't know if that's true. But you've made a case for it. I get it. And I don't think either one of us are sitting here going, whoever comes in is sitting on a gold mine. I think whoever comes in here has opportunity.
Yeah, and I think, I'll say this, it's not as black as it seems, but it's also not sunshine and rainbows. I mean, they have a lot of picks in this year's draft, not a ton, but quite a bit.
A lot by Calgary standards. How about that?
They have a lot in Calgary standards, and they kept their late picks, so they have a chance of getting some gems in the late rounds. This is an organization that's drafted fairly well in recent years, especially compared to the regime prior. If you look at the farm system, up and down, they have guys that they drafted and developed. Walker Duer, our friend Pat Steinberg from Sports 960 The Fan, is reporting that the Flames are close to an extension for Walker Duer. Walker Duer is a guy their college scouts found. They found him.
He's an extra.
Yeah, he's another Garnet Hathaway, a guy that you go out and you find. He doesn't cost you nothing outside of the manpower to find him, but that helps. They're able to find guys in Europe with David Riddick and the like. They're able to find guys in college. They've been able to find guys sort of all over the place. So I think, there's something there. If you look at the Athletics rankings of prospects systems, Scott Wheeler of the Athletic does that along with Corey Proman. Yeah, they're ranked fairly low because they don't have high end depth. They have guys that will come in, like outside of Dustin Wolf. I don't think they have anybody who will steal you games.
Can I just say one thing? How would this organization, how would Brad Treliving be viewed if Adam Fox was on this team?
Well, that's again, let's flip that.
They drafted him, right? They drafted him, but nobody else drafted him. They drafted him.
He was an asset, though. They were able to turn him.
No, I understand. I understand all of that, and it's kind of me. It's me showboating a little bit. But that one that got away, that turns into a Norris Trophy winner in such a young career with a Calgarian like Cale Makar, who's in Colorado, just lighting it up. I'm not saying he's as good as Cale, but he's in that category. But that one pick, if he's here right now, if he's playing for the Flames, having won a Norris Trophy, all of those sort of things, it'd be crazy how we would view things, don't you think? They drafted him. Yeah. Nobody else drafted. That was my old argument with that's
third overall.
That was
the 2016 draft.
Shea Weber. That was my
Shea
old
Weber.
Shea Weber argument. Oh, look at Nashville. They do such a great job. Do they? They drafted 2 defensemen before they drafted him. Right? If they really knew how good he was, why didn't they take him with the first one? Right? So anyway, sorry, Ryan, I got you off topic there.
Yeah, but that's it's the kind of thing where I'll say this: I'm a draft person. I think you're gauged by how you use your first, but you're also gauged in how you use the rest of them. I mean, if you look at that 2016 draft, they hit the Kachuk pick out of the park. Granted, a lot of weird stuff happened ahead of them.
Oh, that was Weisbrod in Vancouver. Right?
Yeah.
Like Vancouver.
Wanting Ulevi instead of no, it was the Columbus.
In Columbus too,
Dubois,
right? Yeah.
Like, so a couple weird decisions ahead of you, and the exact player you needed fell in your lap. Great,
exactly.
But the same kind of thing happens where if you look at that 2016 draft, second round, Flames get Tyler Parsons, which didn't turn out, and then they get Dylan Dubé, then they get Adam Box later on. They got, I believe that was the year they got Itu Tolola late. They got Matthew Phillips late. So that was one of the years where you're finding useful players up and down that even if they don't play in your organization in the NHL level, they come in and they help your farm system. I mean, if I'm sure that the 21-year-old kids on the Wranglers this year, their development's going to be supercharged by playing meaningful hockey in April and May and June. Potentially June.
Agreed.
But so if you have guys like, the Flames went out and, found Ben Jones. Ben Jones didn't get re-signed by the Golden Knights. The Flames found Ben Jones, and Ben Jones, maybe he's not an NHL guy. Maybe he's just a guy who's like,
but he raises the water level of your prospects, right?
Because then, like, if you don't have Ben Jones, you have a little bit less for everybody else to work with, and maybe you have a 20-year-old Rory Cairns playing over his head for 2/3 of the season until he finally gets ready.
Right.
So
I agree. Anyway, it's not a mess. Who are your so going back to where we started before I diverted us? Who are your candidates right now
for the big chair?
Yeah, you got anybody on your list that is worth talking? Not worth talking.
I don't want to sound like a homer, but I'm a big fan personally and professionally of Craig Conroy and Brad Pascal. Brad Pascal, I mean, an AHL team is a tough thing to manage, and the Wranglers lost from their changeover from the Heat, something like 8 to 10 guys, and they lost, I think, at some point, they lost something like 2/3 their offense. If you look at the goals that were scored by the season prior, they lost their backup goalie, they lost most of their defense, they lost about half of their forwards, and they replaced them with whoever they were tactical with what kind of guys they looked at, hence Ben Jones. But I think they did a really good job filling in the gaps with the right types of players and the right types of people. And I think it's worked out really well. And Craig Conroy has been around since he retired in 2011 or 2010 or 2011. But since then, like he's worked all over the place. He ran the firm team. He's involved in scouting. He's involved in contract negotiations. If you need to sign a college player, you send him in a private plane and, a contract, and then you come home with a Johnny Gaudreau or a Matt Coronado or something like that. So, I mean, I think those two, because of I think they'll completely understand the situation they're in, and I think they'll have some ideas for how to navigate it. And I think that internal knowledge of how the Flames, both as an organization, as a corporation, as a member of the community, operate gives them a lot of insight. Out of the box ideas, I think Eric Tulsky in Carolina is the best guy in the league who's not a GM yet. That said, he's working under president/GM Don Waddell in Carolina, and president/GM means that you're either half-assing one of those jobs or someone else is doing one of those jobs for you. And all counts are the presidential jobs are primarily being done by Waddell, and Eric Tulsky is basically AGM and title only, and he's a very well-paid one. And so if you're the Flames, if you want to get Eric Tulsky out of Carolina, you better have a hell of a pitch, and you better be willing to open the checkbook, because I think if you offer him a dollar amount, he'll just turn around to Tom Dundon out of loyalty and say, "What do you think, Tom? Can you match this?"
Yeah.
So, but I'll say this: when the Flames hired Brad Treliving, who turned out to be the right guy for the job at the time they needed him to be, he was sort of a out of left field pick. I mean, he was sort of, for lack of a better term, all due respect to our friends in Arizona, kind of toiling in relative obscurity in Arizona. And, but I think the fact that you're working with a really tight budget in Arizona, the fact that you're working with a very weird ownership situation in Arizona with the league involved, and then a multitude of owners swirling around and changing of the guards repeatedly, and then eventually an eviction, working in Arizona, I think low key gets you really ready for any other job, because there's not much you're going to be thrown in.
Absolutely. You have to be creative, inventive. You have to do things on the cheap, all of those sort of things, which, to me, it was when Glenn Sather left the Oilers and went to the Rangers. He was working for this group of 30 whatever owners, and he couldn't spend money and all of those sort of things. And he got to the Rangers, and he spent like a sailor. Like it was incredible. That's not what you're talking about, but I think you're right. I think
I think there's some
creativity's a breeding ground there.
And especially if you do it earlier in your career, if you learn how to operate in that kind of environment and that's all you know, it's like the Wizard of Oz, and all of a sudden everything's in color.
That's right. That's a great way of putting it. I'm like you. To me, the top of the list is the two guys you mentioned. Conroy, probably just because he's been here longer and that sort of thing, but Pascal right there. I'm kind of curious about, because I'd heard Telski from others, but is there any European? Is there anybody we're not talking about that's, on a traditional path or a non-traditional path? Is there a woman out there? Is there somebody out there that,
at some point, someone's going to try to steal Cami Granado away from, I think she's in Vancouver now.
Yes.
At some point, someone's going to try to steal Alexandra Mandrazek out of Seattle.
Okay.
At some point, there's a lot of good Europeans around. I think the challenge is now a lot of the up and coming female AGMs have only been their gigs for a year or two. Sure. And so you might need to have, I think I'll say this. I think the fact that you have an experienced president of hockey operations like Don Maloney gives you the opportunity to do something creative like that. So I'm really excited to sort of, inevitably as the weeks go on and as we get further into May, I assume Frank or Dreger or Friedman will tweet out a list of names at some point when interviews begin. And I'm really excited to be surprised by some of those names, because it's the names that you don't really think, that aren't really front of mind. I mean, are any of us going to be surprised to hear, oh, the Flames are interviewing Brad Pascal, the Flames are interviewing, no. Craig Conroy? No.
Because they should.
Yeah, they should. But I also think, some of these up and coming female AGMs deserve the opportunity to at least interview, because if you're trying to get the brain trust in the league to a higher level, I think you have to not only put good people in those kind of positions, but also give them the opportunity to interview for other positions and figure out what they don't know. Because I think being exposed in an interview to how another organization works and ask for your thoughts, and maybe ask questions you weren't expected to be asked, and then even if you don't get the job, you go back to your old job and go, oh man, they asked us about this. I totally didn't expect you to ask about that. Why aren't we doing that? Those kind of things. I think that's how the analytics movement more or less spread throughout hockey.
Absolutely. The other movement that has been brought up, but again, not by me. This is, if you listen to 31 Thoughts podcast, hard not to hear those two guys beating the drum about these services, right? That there's, specialty headhunting firms out there. And there was that conversation a little while ago about, and I think it's what really has led to kind of the start of diversity. I wouldn't say we have diversified front offices, but the start of diversity was getting out of the same old, which is, we fired somebody, so we'll go fire. You bring somebody in who goes out and brings you candidates and goes out and looks for candidates, a service.
And I'll also say, I think, the advent of the president of hockey operations position has allowed teams to not only just interview people they wouldn't interview 10 years ago, hire them. We didn't see, I think we're seeing a lot more diversity in background, diversity in thought, diversity. Flat out, like Eric Tulsky isn't a hockey guy. He didn't come up through hockey. 15 years ago, he doesn't even get thought about. 10 years and maybe 20 years ago, he gets laughed out of the room. Now we're talking about him for a Canadian market and being like, oh man, it'd be so cool if they could get it. We're talking about someone with his background being sought after, being an up and comer. So I totally agree with you. And I think the idea that now you're having teams go to these firms and go, they bring them in, they go, what don't we have? What don't we have here? Here's the people we have here. What don't we have that we need? What other teams have that we don't have?
Yeah.
And I think they're being listened to, and it's resulting in some really creative, exciting things happening in the sport now.
Wednesday, Abbotsford's in town. Wranglers play a best of 5. Do I have this correctly that it's up to the higher seed? You can choose the first 2 or the last 3 as home games.
If you're the Wranglers and you're thinking we won 8 of 12 from these guys in the regular season, and you're thinking, okay, if we sweep, do we want to have 2 home games or 1 home game? I think that might have played into it a bit too. But I mean, the Wranglers had a real good home record this year, and especially in the second half of the year. And I think that's probably the home record, I think, was the main thing. But yeah, it's the higher seeded team gets the choice. Coachella Valley, the second seeded team, they're playing games 1 and 2 on the road, and then they're playing 3 in a row in at whatever the arena is called in Coachella Valley, Palm Springs.
Yeah.
Possibly that and San Diego might be the 2 most alluring destinations for road teams.
No kidding. I thought you pointed it out on Twitter last night. I like it. I thought it was an interesting decision to have to make. I like stuff like that. Like you can bet that's been talked about. I'm sure you probably have writers that have written about it already at Flames Nation about what the logic is or what you should do. I love stuff like that. That to me is fun. I'd like to see that in the NHL, except that we don't have best of 5s yet or anymore. What are we expecting in this playoff run? Because you get Walker Duehr back, you get Pelche back. We've seen accolade after accolade after accolade for Wolf. Are we, this is a team that went to the Western Conference final last year against Chicago. Is this, this is a long run I'm assuming that everybody's preparing for.
They're a better team they were a year ago.
Okay.
If they score more, they allow less. They have, I think, a deeper team. And I think the nice thing is, like, they're going to have potentially for game 1, like they have, Oscar Dansk is a very capable backup goaltender. I doubt we see much of him over the next few months, simply because of who's in front of him. They have a couple pretty good depth guys in Josh Brook and Christian Rubens who won't be playing in game 1. Alex Gantley playing, serving the last game of his 3-game suspension for game 1. And it looks like maybe Mitch McLean stays out. He was out for the last game. But, you're gaining bodies back from the NHL team who are very familiar with this team, who were on this team last year when they were on the run. And I think a lot of the guys they have, a lot of the guys that they have who are on the team this year were sort of black aces last year. They got brought in at the end of the season and said, okay, hang out and watch and, get familiar with this. And so I think it's a group that very much feels like they have something to prove. When we talked to Dustin Wolf at the end of his first National Hockey League win, his focus was, he's like, cool, got tomorrow off. And, then he was getting ready to fly to Abbotsford to play 2 games and win them both and then get ready for a Calder Cup run. And I would suggest that his level of focus is almost universal in terms of how that team looks at things, because, there's plenty of teams, and I'm sure Mitch Love is reminding them this daily. There's plenty of teams that have good regular seasons and then do nothing in the regular season.
Sure.
And I think they want to be a team that, people come into their building, for example, Wednesday and Friday, an opponent comes to their building going, oh Lord, this is going to be a long night. And then they deliver that long night. And they've done it a lot in the regular season, but it's everything resets. There's, Coachella Valley got, a bit of a scare in their first round against Tucson. And I think the Wranglers were very much aware of Coachella Valley white knuckling it through the first 2 games of their series, and then very much delivering a drubbing to the Roadrunners. But I think they feel like they have something to prove. And I think until they can get some wins under their belt, I don't think they're going to be feeling particularly satisfied, so to speak.
Yeah. I'm really kind of curious about what we see from Dustin Wolf. I like what he said. Like, I loved his comments about, I want to make, I want to be there and I want to make life difficult. And if I have a long run, he's equated the two, which he should. I'm really kind of curious to see what, you know what it's like, Ryan, when the big club's playing, I think some people are paying attention, but because the big club hasn't been playing, I think a lot of people were starting to, perk their ears up when they heard player of the year, goalie of the year, all of these accolades that he has gotten, first team All-Star. Really kind of curious to see how he runs through the playoffs this year.
Yeah. And I think you're completely right. And I think we're going to learn a lot about this group from those first two home games, because it'll be, all due respect to them, they've been in the shadow of the big club all year. And that's kind of the AHL team's gig.
Sure.
But, if the idea is that, a lot of people who are Flames fans, Flames season ticket holders, will be coming down to see a Wranglers game for maybe the first time on Wednesday and Friday. Yep. And they'll be going, are these guys as good as I've been hearing? Because I'm kind of dissatisfied with the big club right now. What do they got for kids? What do they got for hope? Because when the big club's not great, you got to sell hope. And right now, I think a lot of people are feeling hopeful, but also, as is the lot of a Calgary sports fan, basically throughout the city's history, everyone's hopeful, but also a little anxious.
Yes.
And I think, having a good first game, first period, first shift, first homestand could do a lot to alleviate some of that anxiety and sort of, help them puff their chests out a bit.
Before I let you go, you mentioned the field house. I was going to ask you about the building. What's the latest on the arena discussions?
Well, they're ongoing. So the funny thing is, there's no committee meeting this month for the event center committee because they just couldn't work out the scheduling. So instead of the most recent negotiating update being presented to the smaller group first, it's actually just going to be presented directly to full council, which is a bit of a departure. It's the first time they've done that. The first time that the gentleman from CAA Icon will speak in front of the full group. I believe, of the 15 people in council, they presented in front of, I think, something like 11 or 12 of them. So there's a couple of counselors that weren't able to make the last two meetings where they presented, but they will present the March update from the March council, or from the March committee meeting to council on Tuesday. And then they'll present a brand new update. And we'll see what happens. To be honest, there's enough new stuff to talk about that they have to have monthly meetings and monthly updates. And that's something. I mean, they did multiple updates in March. They've done, this update comes 4 weeks after the last meeting in March. So they'll have a bit more to do. I think, judging from last time, the deadline they were working towards was the July council recess. Council typically takes August off, and then they get back together for administrative organizational meetings in September. And then they really go full force during the end of September. So the next real benchmark to see what happens is basically how many meetings we have between now and the beginning of July, because they got some time until things get hairy and then Stampede hits. I'm sure they would, in an ideal world, you have something fun to announce at Stampede or during Flames training camp or whatever. Like, there's plenty of benchmark dates where I'm sure they would love to have something to present, but I'm also sure they want something that doesn't suck to present. And they know that people like us are going to be, looking at whatever deal they present with some sort of a fine-tooth comb. But all indications are that they're proceeding towards having something for us to pour over with a fine-tooth comb. I would say right now, my gut says matter of months, but that's not based on any kind of inside information outside of sort of how this thing went last time.
I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to think less of me for asking it. You brought up the fact, and I saw it today, you actually tweeted it out, that the field house is moving along. They've had good conversations. They've got money for it and everything. Is because this is a new council and because time has passed, is there any chance that somebody's going to go, why don't we connect the two? A Calgary Next Lake project again?
I'd say less than zero.
Good. Thank you.
Less than zero.
And now you think less of me. But with this particular crew and these particular thinkers sometimes, because you cannot tell me, Ryan, that anybody on the city side thinks they're going to be paying less this time than they would have in the original deal.
Oh, probably not. But I also think that, their plan right now is the stuff that they're putting in the cultural entertainment district is meant to sort of be for lack of a better term, shiny toys. Like you're going to have Arts Commons, you're going to have the library, you're going to have BMO Center, you're going to have the new arena. And the idea is that, you're going to go down and it'll be built for pro sports and pro concerts and this, that, and the other thing. The field house is sort of more steered towards sort of amateur sport. And,
100%.
Less bells and whistles. So I think the purposes of the two are sort of antithetical to sort of co-locate them. And to be honest, that was one of the things that came out of, I know folks always sort of deride Calgary Next, and in some cases rightfully so. There were some aspects of the project that didn't really work. But I think one of the better things that came out of it was the city gave it a full-throated, I'm not going to say defense, but they gave it a full-throated analysis and went, okay, why not? And one of the reasons why not was they just felt that having pro and amateur sports, you're not going to be able to keep a field house empty because the pro team wants to practice or whatever. So there was a lot of purposes that they're like, ooh, that kind of goes against what the other side wants to do here. And so the programmatically, I think there would have been a lot of things that wouldn't work. And I think that's the programmatic aspect is one of the things that keeps them from really exploring that for a newer facility now.
Okay. I'm glad I asked the question because the answer was better than the question.
That wasn't a bad question.
Well, I just worry sometimes. What's going on at Flames Nation regarding the Wranglers? What kind of coverage can we expect here during the playoffs?
Well, Mike Gould and Paige Seward are all over the Wranglers beat. I will be chipping in where they basically need me to jump in, but I'll be poking and prodding the NHL club's ashes, and they'll be they'll be delving deep into the Wrangler stuff. So we'll have all kinds of stuff starting Tuesday and Wednesday, and basically running until there's nothing else to talk about. The fun thing for us is that our friends over at Canucks Army are covering the Abbotsford Canucks inside and out. So then it's a fun sort of a build. It gives us a fun chance that we're live at the games in Calgary. They're live at the games in Abbotsford. So we sort of get a chance to sort of give each other a view from the other side on each other's prospects. And, it'll be fun. So folks, I know you might cringe at the idea of clicking over to Canucks Army, and we apologize in advance, but over the next couple of weeks, you probably will want to roam over to there too, to check out with what Chris Faber and Quadrelli and their crew have, because there's going to be a lot of stuff and probably too much stuff to fill it on one website.
Well, listen, I work with people from the Oiler Nation network every day, and they're okay. Not what I expected. They're okay. So all
I know is the checks as long as the checks clear, we're going to keep singing this song.
Well, that's how it works. GMs or otherwise, right? The bosses pay you. You do the work, Ryan. I think we've established that today. Thank you, my friend. We will see you next Monday.
Take care.
There you go. Ryan Pike. Joining us, of course, brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. 76 years in Calgary. If you can't trust 76 years in this market, knowing what they know, doing what they do, working with who they work with, come on now. You need skis, you need bindings, you need snowboard. How about this? We don't even talk about their snow skating. Check it out. You're a hockey player. Have you ever gone snow skating? Check it out. Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. Kind of took a couple of shows off, but I came back today with a reading assignment. We threw it out on Twitter a little while ago. Calgary Herald story. Headversity acquires Respect Group with goal of improving workplace culture, from Josh Aldrich. I love it. Two made in Calgary international solutions. Of course, the Respect Group is Wayne McNeil and, of course, Sheldon Kennedy, who we are trying to get on the program. Not trying. He's going to be on the program here in the next couple of weeks. Get Sheldon on. They have been doing incredible work with the Respect Group. If you're a parent and you've got a child in sport, no doubt you've taken the Respect in Sport program, the Respect in Work program. It's highly, highly thought of. But Headversity, Dr. Ryan Todd, that's another made in Calgary solution. They've been on the tech side. They have an app, but they do a lot of work with USHL and other teams, and they also do some work with workplace culture. So kind of cool that two of the world leaders are right in our own backyard, and Headversity now buying up a Respect Group. So I'm curious to see where that goes. It's an article worth your attention, finding out about solutions in mental health, in the sphere of mental health, how it works in sport, and how it works in amateur sport, all those things right here in our own backyard. So that is your reading assignment today. I tweeted it out a little earlier. Final Mile. let's throw a little football in there. We had Chevy and Nasty on earlier. Thanks to Gav for this. It is finally done. Aaron Rodgers is now a New York Jet. The Jets get Aaron Rodgers, the 15th overall pick, 2023 fifth round pick. Green Bay gets a 13th overall pick, so they move up a couple of spots. 23rd second round pick, 23rd sixth round pick, 24th conditional second round pick. It becomes a first, so it's conditional. This is kind of the Brad Treliving stuff. It becomes a first if Rodgers plays 65% of the plays that year, I believe. So 65% of the plays. No, it would have to be this year, wouldn't it? Because it'd be a 24 that becomes a first. So if you play 65%. Anyway, yeah. Yes, upcoming season. Thanks, Gav. Gav did an amazing job of getting that in there. So just wanted to leave you with that. Congratulations to all the winners at the Booster Club yesterday. Cale McCarr is your male athlete of the year. No surprise there, but worthwhile. If you check out the Calgary Booster Club, all of the high school students, Olympic athletes, high school athletes, the Harry Hood Awards were given out in football. Just a great evening celebrating sport in our city and celebrating the grassroots part of our sport, where our elite athletes come from, the Calgary Boosters Club. So make sure you check that out. Thanks to our outstanding producers today, all of them in order: Jack, Gavin, and Mark. Thanks, guys. Programming note: Wednesday, the Doughboy is in with us, full 2 hours, as a matter of fact. His son's going to be joining us. He's in a different location. They're working on a joint book. Bruce and his son are working on a book, and then Bruce and I are going to yell at each other for about a good hour, I would say. Probably a good hour and a half. Also, on Thursday, making my first ever hosting appearance with Rhett Warner on the Barn Burner. Looking forward to that. Not sure what that's going to look like, but I'm looking forward to it. Thanks to Chevy and Nasty. Check out the podcast, Ride with Chevy and Nasty. And, of course, to Ryan Pike, managing editor at FlamesNation Network. So much going on there as the Wranglers open up on Wednesday. We're back Wednesday. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked us, please tell your friends. Share it around. Give us a good rating. Say nice things about us. We're really got thin skin. So if you could really say nice things about us, that would be great. Talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.
When there's two sides to every coin, then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks, and some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry, get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have